2025 has truly been the year of the underdog. The amount of teams that have finally won their first trophy this season has been amazing. And out of all of these beautiful stories, two of them have given us the most beautiful hate watches of 2025. And we can't start anywhere better than Bologna, Italy. Bologna FC, a team who had last won a trophy in 1974. Going into 2025, they qualified for the Champions League for the first time, and they're trying to get a little something. And they ended up being in the Italian Cup final against AC Milan, and that should be scary. AC Milan, one of the biggest clubs in Italy, 7-time Champions League winners. They won the Scudetto a couple years ago. Leading up to this final, Bologna went through teams like Monza in the round of 16, playing Atalanta in the quarterfinals and beating them 1-0. And in the semi-finals, completely demolishing Empoli 5-1 on aggregate. And in this final, they needed to do everything to get past AC Milan. Going into halftime, it was a fairly decent game. Milan and Bologna both had a couple chances, but it was still 0-0. And in the second half, in the 52nd minute, Bologna managed to finally break through and get the first goal. And luckily for them, AC Milan did not have anything else to provide in the game, and they won their first trophy since 1974. To put it in perspective, this is their first trophy in 51 years. Damn! And you gotta say, they deserve it. They beat every single team fair and squarely, and fair play to them. First trophy in 51 years. This is a little light one, but we're gonna move on to the big three here. But let's move on to Newcastle United. They've had a decent season last year. They were in the Champions League that year, but unfortunately got knocked out in the group of death. Some people say they should have gone through off of a robbery in PSG, but that's up to debate still. And going into the season, Newcastle haven't won a trophy since 1955. That's almost 70 years without winning anything. And they got their first chance in the Carabao Cup. And here's the thing, they almost got knocked out in the second round by Nottingham Forest. They squeezed through 4-3 on penalties at the end. And in the third round, they narrowly beat Wimbledon through a Fabian Sharp penalty.
The game's gone. The game's gone.
The game's gone.
Game's gone.
Where is it?
Where is it?
Things are looking good for Newcastle so far, but in the round of 16, they got their first real test. And here's the thing, they actually played Chelsea in the Premier League just a couple days before this game, losing 2-1 at Stamford Bridge. Going into this game at St. James's Park, under the lights, they needed to get this win to go through, in which they did. They beat Chelsea 2-0 on the night, going through to the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup. And in the quarterfinals, they got a very easy draw against Brentford, in which they dispatched off with relative ease. But in the semi-finals, they were playing Arsenal, the Gooners, which means now they were in the semi-finals. They were 3 games away from winning a trophy after 70 years. But who stood in front of them? Arsenal. The Gooners. They themselves haven't won a trophy in almost 6 years. They needed to get something under Mikel Arteta. The first game was at the Emirates, but Newcastle didn't care. They rocked up to the Emirates, beating them 2-0. Goals from Isak and Anthony Gordon. They are just 2 games away from winning a trophy for the first time. And in the second leg, they dispatched with Arsenal again, beating them 4-0 over the 2 legs. Everybody wanted them to end their 70-year-long trophy drought. I don't really want to talk about this final as a Liverpool fan, but let's get into this, shall we? And here's the thing, Newcastle actually played Liverpool a couple of weeks before this game at Anfield, losing 2-0. Does this sound familiar to y'all?
Flashback.
And here's the thing, they actually played Chelsea in the Premier League just a couple days before this game, losing 2-1 at Stamford Bridge. I should have realized then that it was over, man. How am I so stupid? Liverpool actually got knocked out of the Champions League a couple of days before, so Liverpool's hands were not in it, and Newcastle won their first trophy in 70 years, beating Liverpool 2-1 in the Carabao Cup final. And actually, fair play to them, I like seeing other teams win a trophy for a chance. Which brings me on to the third team on this list, Crystal Palace, the Eagles. There isn't really much to talk about when it comes to Crystal Palace this season. They finished 11th. But here's the thing about Crystal Palace. They have never in their entire history won a single major trophy. And they had their chance to change that for the first time this year in the FA Cup. In the third round, Crystal Palace played Stockport, in which they narrowly beat 1-0. Going into the fourth round, they actually played Doncaster, which they won easily 2-0. And in the fifth round, they beat Millwall 3-1, booking their place in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, in which they played Fulham. Fulham themselves were not a bad team this year. I'd even argue that Fulham were a better team than Crystal Palace this year, but still, Palace didn't care. It didn't matter to them. They went to Craven Cottage and beat them 3-0. which means they're now in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. They're 2 games away from winning their first ever trophy. And in the semi-finals, they played Aston Villa, and Aston Villa were having a decent season themselves. They were fighting for the Champions League positions. They made it all the way to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, narrowly losing to PSG. Aston Villa themselves also had a chance to win the first trophy in a while as well. But Crystal Palace, beyond the odds, managed to beat Villa 3-0 in the semi-final. Now, I thought Crystal Palace would win this game, but I never thought that they'd beat them 3-0. To be fair though, they beat them 4-1 in the Premier League a couple of months ago, so some people could have predicted this. But now they were in the final of the FA Cup against Manchester City, the Citizens, the treble winners, Pep Guardiola's men, the team that has won 4 Premier League titles in a row. City themselves had an off season. They were also fighting for the Champions League spots, which is kind of rare to them, unlike in previous years in which they were fighting for the actual title. But still, they needed to win a trophy this season. They didn't want to go trophyless. But there was some hope for Crystal Palace fans, because last year in the FA Cup, they actually lost to Manchester United. And if they lost to United, any team can beat them. And Palace balled their hearts out, getting past Manchester City, beating them 1-0, winning their first ever major trophy. And fair play to Crystal Palace, bro. This hate watch was sensational. City go trophyless instead of them winning the 5P. Wowzers. Which means now, instead of finishing mid-table and being somewhat boring, they actually got a trophy and they get into the Europa League next season. And they also get a spot in the Community Shield final against Liverpool, in which they can win another trophy. Palace, fair play, man. Hopefully you guys beat us in that Community Shield final. I'm not trying to get cursed. But moving on to the biggest, the most egregious, the most beautiful hate watches of them all, the Europa League final. The final was Manchester United versus Tottenham Hotspur. Man United and Tottenham themselves were having their worst season in its history. Both teams were sat 16th and 17th just before this final. Both teams need to win this final so they can continue on their project. Whoever loses this final, their future is finished. And Tottenham themselves, it was not looking good for them. They haven't won a trophy since 2008. I was only 2 years old when that happened. The last time Tottenham won a trophy, I couldn't even speak English. And it wasn't looking good for them. Their league form has been horrible, losing to teams like Leicester and Ipswich at home. They made it all the way to the Carabao Cup semi-finals just to lose to Liverpool. They needed to get a trophy this season, and the Europa League was the only way they could do it. And Ange Postecoglou, their manager, promised that he's gonna win a trophy. He said he usually wins things, and then he doubled down saying that he always wins things in his second season. To say you're gonna win something with Tottenham Hotspur, even though they haven't won something in 18 years, it was a bold claim from Mr. Postecoglou, but let's see if he actually came through with it. In the Europa League, Tottenham actually finished 4th in the league phases, getting them automatic qualification for the round of 16. In the round of 16, they played AZ Alkmaar, in which they narrowly beat 3-2 on aggregate. Then in the quarterfinals came their biggest test, Eintracht Frankfurt. Frankfurt lost their star Omar Marmoush, but they still had good players, and Tottenham needed to get something out of this first leg at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And it wasn't looking good for them since they were 1-0 down very early in the game. But they managed to get an equalizer and the game ended 1-1. Tottenham needs to win away at Frankfurt, in which they do. Solanke scores a penalty and they managed to hold on for the rest of the game. Going into the semi-finals now, they were playing Bodo Glimt. Now people might be thinking Bodo Glimt should be an easy team to get past, but Bodo themselves have not been bad this season, especially at home. Bodo Glimt at home is not somewhere you want to go. But it didn't matter. The Spurs, they managed to get through and beat Bodo 2-0, which means they were now in the Europa League final. But here's the thing, they weren't alone. Manchester United themselves also made the Europa League final. But here's the thing, every time Tottenham played Man United in the Premier League, they have won every time. Out of the 3 games they played this season, Tottenham has won every single time. Man United actually haven't beaten Tottenham Hotspur since 2022. They must win this final, in which they do. Brendan Johnson put them 1-0 up just before the second half, and once again they managed to hold on and won themselves a trophy for the first time in 17 years. Fair play Tottenham, man. Thank God. That hate watch I had was beautiful. Manchester United are so embarrassing. They finished 16th in the Premier League, and in the only game in this final, which means everything, they bottled it to Tottenham Hotspur of all teams. United will forever be a banter club. What a beautiful game, man. Tottenham Tottenham, Bologna, Newcastle, and Crystal Palace all winning the trophy for the first time in how long? And this week for me has been beautiful, to be honest. Man United lose a European final. Liverpool are going to lift the Premier League title this Sunday. And I hit 4,000 subscribers, bro. This is perfect for me. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Road to 10K is on. Like the video if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a amazing day, people. Goodbye.